Hello everyone, good to be with you again. We'll be getting into the subject matter of this video shortly, but I just wanted to let some of my regular viewers know where I'm at. This is a very different backdrop behind me here. I'm in a hotel room in Honolulu. I mentioned last week that I would be coming back here to this island, which I haven't seen since my Army days, way back in the early 1980s. And so we arrived here a couple of days ago. I'm accompanying my best friend on another convention of her fellow scientists, and they're meeting sensibly in Honolulu this week. And so I'm along for the ride, so to speak. Kind of a bumpy ride it was, actually. Real fiasco on the airplane that I took over here, which I guess I'll make a separate video about someday when I fully recovered from the experience. But today I wanted to talk about synergism and how this soteriology that we call synergism effectively destroys free grace, which claims, and not only free grace, but any other theory of salvation that involves nothing but belief, works-free salvation. And there's always been this false dichotomy: we're saved by faith or we're saved by works. Well, as I'm about to explain, unless you are a monergist, that is somebody who believes that God does everything and that human beings have no role whatsoever in their own salvation, well then you are a synergist. And synergism, by definition, requires works. So let me try and explain what I'm saying. This word, let me explain the terms first. All right, again, monergism is a soteriological term which claims that God does everything for you to be saved. He causes you to believe what you need to believe to be saved. Now, this view is held by Lutherans since their Book of Concord in 1580. Martin Luther was a complete monergist. He was someone who believed God chose you for salvation or he chose you for damnation, and he did everything. You played absolutely no role. You played an absolutely passive role in your own salvation. Other reformers like Zwingli and Calvin and Beza and Thomas Cranmer of the newly formed Anglican Church, they all were monergists. They believed God does everything. Now, this view that God does everything, this comes from a theologian and a revered saint of the Catholic Church called Augustine of Hippo. And he lived in the late 4th century AD and the early 5th century AD. And actually, Augustine of Hippo is the source of all sorts of soteriological mischief. The idea that we are chosen for either salvation or reprobation from ages before, and that this is nothing that we have any control over. This comes from this very complicated theologian, Augustine of Hippo. Before that, the church fathers were pretty much unanimous that salvation was synergistic. Now, I don't have my PowerPoint here to put these words on the screen. Maybe I should have waited, but I was talking about this subject on the Praise I Am Bible study parody last night from here. It was kind of later in the evening and there was not much to do in this hotel room, so I went to the Praise I Am, again, Bible study parody program on YouTube. And I'm in the chat there, and I'm seeing how many words I can say before getting blocked. But I ended up getting into this subject of monergism and synergism. And now the free grace people, they are synergists. They don't think like Calvin freaks that God does everything. They believe that they have to make a decision to believe the gospel. And once they believe the gospel, they can live like the devil. But the initial decision to believe the gospel is their own. They entirely reject Calvinism that says, no, it is God who basically hits you with the divine equivalent of love potion number 9 and causes you to believe all those warm and fuzzy thoughts about Jesus. The free grace fools, they maintain, no, you actually have to make a decision to believe the gospel. And once you've believed what the guards of the empty tomb believe, well, then it's all over. You're going to heaven. Doesn't matter what you do after that because you made a decision to believe. Well, I tried to point out in this Praise I Am chat room last night that those who hold to this view, like free grace, that they actually have to make a decision to believe, these people are synergists. Now, this word synergist is contrasted with monergist. Mon meaning one, and the other word, it's a compound word, monergist and synergist. They're both compound words. The prefix mon indicates one. The prefix syn, S-Y-N, indicates with. It's translated into English with. And the other part of the word comes from the Greek word ergon. They're both, it's a Greek word, basically. We stole it from the Greeks. And this is the transliteration of these Greek words, monergism and synergism. But the part of the word where you get the ergism, synergism, the ergism, that word comes from the Greek word ergon, which means works. Works. Synergism. With works. Monergism. One works. So you believe either there is one party working, you're a monergist. If, like our friends, the Calvin freaks, Weckel, who is the other one, the synagogue, if you believe like these goddamned, that God has done all the work and he's going to do all the work there is for you to get to paradise, well, you are a monergist. But if you believe that you actually had to make a decision to believe the gospel, this thought, this conclusion wasn't just inserted in your head, but you actually had to weigh the evidence and make a decision to believe, well, then you are a synergist with works. Works. Do you understand? Synergism with works. And you free grace fools who are out here every night saying it's not about your works, it's about your belief. Well, this term, synergism, calls you a goddamned liar. You understand? Synergism with works. And you have a choice. You're either a monergist, no works, or you are a synergist. So, layman seminary, which one are you? The dude. Which one are you? Are you a monergist, dude? Or are you a synergist? Well, guess what? If you are a synergist, like the Eastern Orthodox Church, like the Roman Catholics, like Arminians, if you are a synergist, you believe in works salvation because your cooperation with God is a work. That's why it's called synergism. Ergism. Works. With works. You understand that? So your claim that you're saved by your faith, not your works, is a lie from hell. The only one who's saved by faith without works are the monergists, those fools, the hardcore Lutholaters, the hardcore Calvitards, okay? And you free grace fools, you're always on YouTube putting down the Calvitards, claiming that their theory of election is bogus. Well, you're right about that, but you're wrong when you say you haven't done anything to bring salvation to yourself. You're trying to have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. You're either with the Calvitards or you're against them. So which is it? Are you a synergist or are you a monergist? I will leave you to fast and pray about that. Now I'm going to go out and enjoy Honolulu, and I'll look for your comments later, and maybe I'll respond to them if they're halfway sensible. If not, I'll ignore them. Or maybe I'll block you like you blocked me. All right, so I say have a wonderful evening, my fellow synergists, and I'll see you when I'm back in that big bad apple again, where, let's face it, somebody has to live. Have a good week, everyone.